Now here's the truth that no one will tell you about.
Your diet could be making you sick.
Let me tell you, I suffered from autoimmune flare-ups, GI issues, eczema, hormonal issues, and that's not even everything. But guess what? I found relief, and so can you. So in this video, I'm breaking down the first 5 dietary changes that helped me finally get relief and start healing from the inside out. Now, number 5, I had to actually go to a nutritionist to find that one out.
Now, this is part 1 of a 2-part series, so if you're on your healing journey, make sure you press that subscribe button so you don't miss part 2.
So the first dietary change that had the biggest impact was eliminating foods that I was allergic or sensitive to. I used to eat certain foods daily because they were healthy. Whole wheat bread, fiber-one cereal, trail mix, blueberries. And you might say, well, what's wrong with those foods? Nothing for most people. But it turns out I was sensitive to gluten and some fruits, and I had developed an allergy to peanuts and almonds. Now, allergies and sensitivities are specific to each person. So the foods that cause me to react, you may be perfectly fine with. But did you know that you can develop allergies as you get older? Who knew? Well, it happened to me, and once I removed those foods from my diet, I began suffering fewer autoimmune flare-ups, less bloating, and clearer skin. Why? Because when you eat foods that your body reacts to, your body sees these foods as a threat. So every bite you eat is triggering like a 911 fight or flight reaction. What do you think is happening to your body over the long haul?
Hey, if you live with autoimmune disease and you want to know what's triggering your autoimmune flare-ups, be sure to click on the link in the description below for your free copy of 25 Triggers of Autoimmune Flare-Ups.
Now, the second dietary change that had the biggest impact on improving my symptoms was going gluten-free.
Now, I know I mentioned gluten already because it was a sensitivity for me, but I think it's also worth mentioning that gluten can be highly inflammatory for people with autoimmune disease and other inflammatory conditions.
Now, does everyone need to give up gluten? Probably not, but if you suffer from autoimmune flare-ups, irritable bowel syndrome, or skin conditions like eczema or psoriasis, you may want to consider it. Why? Well, for a few reasons. Gluten can affect the gut barrier, and this gut barrier keeps partially digested foods and toxins from entering your bloodstream. Now, if this barrier gets compromised, a condition known as leaky gut syndrome, then this can actually trigger systemic inflammation in your body, especially if you already have a sensitive immune system. Now, for some gluten-sensitive people, gluten can actually aggravate the nervous system, and this can trigger migraines and brain fog.
Hey, if you like this video so far, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps more people find this content, and it lets me know to keep making more videos just like this for you.
Now, a third dietary change that had a big impact on improving my symptoms was going dairy-free. Now, dairy was a sneaky little sensitivity. I never realized how much it was contributing to my postnasal drip and my congestion and my seasonal allergies of all things until I gave it up. Now, for many of us with autoimmune issues, eczema or asthma, dairy can be inflammatory even if you're not allergic to milk. Why? Because some people can't tolerate casein, a protein found in milk. Someone with a casein sensitivity might not have a reaction for up to 72 hours. Now, another possible reason is the protein structure in dairy is very similar to the protein structure in gluten. So if you have a gluten sensitivity, guess what? You may also be sensitive to dairy. A fourth dietary change that had the biggest impact on improving my symptoms was eating clean and reducing my intake of processed foods. I always thought I ate healthy because I prepared what I thought were balanced meals for dinner, but I never considered the carb-fueled bagels and muffins that I had for breakfast every day, or the processed meats and occasional fast foods that I had for lunch. Foods like this were responsible for the sugar crashes that triggered my migraines and left me feeling fatigued. Not to mention that it gave me GI issues as well. But once I started eliminating processed foods and eating real food made at home with simple ingredients, I felt so much better. Why is that? Well, because processed foods have had the nutrients processed right out of them, And manufacturers have put in excessive sugar, fat, and salt and artificial ingredients. And listen, clean eating is not about perfection. Clean eating is about eating minimally processed foods, foods that have less artificial ingredients and are more nutritious to give your body the nourishment that it needs to heal. Now, finally, a fifth dietary change that had a huge impact on improving my symptoms was reducing my intake of high FODMAP foods. Now, you may be asking, what in the heck is a high FODMAP food? Well, FODMAP is an acronym that stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But basically, they're carbohydrates that are poorly absorbed in the lower intestine, and so they sit there and ferment. Yeah, in your gut. Now, this can cause diarrhea, constipation, abdominal pain, and bloating for certain people with irritable bowel syndrome or other gut issues. But believe it or not, that wasn't what led me to reduce my intake of high FODMAP foods. See, I noticed that certain foods I ate were triggering my autoimmune disease, and I had no idea because it seemed like sometimes I could eat them and sometimes I couldn't. Well, I went to a nutritionist, partly because of that, partly because when I went gluten-free, I had no idea what I was supposed to eat. And when I told her all the foods that I was reacting to, she was the one that told me that these foods were all high in FODMAPs. Now, here's the thing about high FODMAP foods. We all have personal tolerance levels, right? So you may actually be able to eat them, but in smaller amounts. All right, so those were the first 5 dietary changes that I made that had a huge impact on my healing journey. They dealt with removing foods that I was reacting to. But now the next piece of that journey involves eating more foods that are going to heal. So if you're serious about turning your health around, subscribe to my channel so that you can get notified when the next video becomes available, which is part 2 of this series. And hey, if there's anything that I said that resonated with you, drop a comment. I'd love to hear your story. You never know who you could encourage with what you have to say. That's all for now. Bye-bye.